So now that we understand data ownership and data governance, let's take a look at common pitfalls in maintaining your data. So the first and foremost, as Brooke mentioned, is lack of data ownership. Assigning someone within your organization to be responsible and accountable for your data is crucial. The second, focusing only on new data and/or having a fear of removing or inactivating data. So data is one of your most important assets, but you really shouldn't be afraid to delete it. At the same time, I would never ever advise anybody to go and delete records out of their data without creating a backup first. Data overlay. When data differs, how do you know what data to keep? So this is really a simple answer. The answer is choose your best source and keep data that serves you best. Another pitfall is not understanding all data sources. When you combine data, it's key to understand that these sources are a great opportunity for source coding. So let's take an example here. Let's say that you are purchasing a customer list and you want to be able to track these lists when you're importing them into your database. So you would use source coding to track the performance. Last but not least is duplication. This is a really common occurrence when multiple departments are adding records, and it's a clear waste of money to maintain duplicates within a database. In addition to duplication, there are a number of other data quality issues to look for. The first and foremost is inaccurate address data, and this is probably the most important in my opinion. This is sort of a silly example, but we're going to go through it anyway. So if you have a data entry person who is hitting the A key instead of the I key when entering an address in Washington, Illinois, you might end up sending marketing material to an address in the ghost town of Washington, Alabama, instead of the livelier town of Washington, Illinois. So what's the big deal? It's an A and not an I. Well, the big deal is that not only do you have an inaccurate address, but you're also wasting money on postage and print. The second is incomplete phone numbers. If you operate internationally or in the US, providing sales with incomplete numbers makes their job more difficult and wastes time and money. Last but not least, missing data entries. While you can't force users to enter data that they don't want to enter, you can at least use data quality tools to identify fields within a database that are missing. So an example to avoid this would be to utilize required fields when asking customers or leads for information in online forms.
Can I just add something real quick here?
Please.
And here's a real life example, because one of these things really stuck out to me recently. And I started out my career being very heavily involved with sales. And companies would go out and buy a list, and they would almost always have incomplete phone numbers. And they would go, well, what's the big deal? Just look up the number. So basically what salespeople would turn into is researchers.
Right.
And hours upon hours. And you go, oh, what's the big deal taking 5 minutes to look up a number? Well, if you're expecting that salesperson to be making 7,500 calls a day, 5 minutes 100 times is a lot of time, okay? So things like incomplete phone numbers, inaccurate address data, and I can't stress that enough. When I was at a publisher, they would spend millions of dollars on direct mail pieces, and just having an inaccurate 5% was tens of thousands of dollars of
massive.
wasted revenue. So we really can't encourage everybody enough. Like Kate and her team does a great job when she's acquiring data to really go through that data and find those inaccuracies and kick them back and do further research. So I encourage anybody who takes in data, you really got to take some time with it and find those incomplete numbers, find those inaccurate addresses, because even though it might be 5 to 10%, if you really put that out and do the math of, hey, 5% of your mailings are going to addresses that are junk and are going to get returned, or your salespeople have to look up hundreds of phone numbers, we're talking major money investments there. So I just wanted to pipe that in.
So let's take a look at what this actually looks like. Here are two different samples of customer databases that we were looking at. If we start with the top one, you look on the left-hand side, we look at columns really starting with column C. In the last name, there's numbers and punctuation, right? So we all know that that's garbage. Nobody can mail to David number 1. I mean, maybe they could, but I don't know if it's going to get there. If we start looking over to the right-hand side, you have in columns, is that an E? No, yeah, E, the company, website, job title, you know, it's not complete. So you have some records that do have company or website, you have some that don't. Also looking a little bit closer at the website field, you have different formats of how the URL is in there. No job title, no department, etc. And I'm sure there's a whole slew of other issues if we kept on going to the right there. If you look at the bottom example, starting with the columns B and C on the left-hand side, absolutely no first or last name. And the company, if you can see it there, it says 0 and 1. What is that telling us? Nothing. Again, campaign is blank, website blank, tons of information is blank.